Welcome to Book Club for Movies, everybody, for the week of November 15th. I'm Ryan Miller, and Dune, the Dune dude himself, Matt Amber.
How did you not go with the how you Dune? Or, you know, what are you Dune today? Hey, guess what we're Dune?
I have those spread out throughout the show, thank you very much.
I don't know what you're Dune right now, but...
I even have an OK Abu Dhabi joke that I stole from the internet.
How dare you?
Before we get to any of that on Book Club for Movies, where we watch one movie a week, and then if you've done the same, you can find us the podcast at bookclubformovies.com or Facebook and Twitter or Patreon, where brand newly we are asking for money so we can continue to do this.
Quick updates. We got the newsletter came out.
Yeah. Did it ever? How long did you spend on that?
A long time. It was many hours at night testing things and making sure stuff went out. It's
fantastic.
I got to admit, harrowing. Like me sending that thing out, it was so nerve-wracking to actually hit the send button. It's the first time I've done anything of that nature, especially that much writing. So
I'm coming to enjoy that feeling, like a Dark Souls game that I'll never play. But I assume doing those hard things ends up being pretty fulfilling, because not only do I feel like we get positive feedback from it, but it's really putting ourselves out there, honestly. And reading that thing, I have no doubt that you are really putting yourself out there with that. I tried. That's why it's good, though, I think. So
thanks.
If you agree,
go to patreon.com and continue so that
I was talking to you. If you agree, then yeah, good job.
Well,
but also, yes.
Impossible to tell. Along with that, we've got our first patron exclusive podcast out there, the Blair Witch Project with Evelyn Miller. So go check that out.
And the feed has been established. So
yes.
I believe the way it works is if you're a patron, you'll obviously get, because these will be essentially Patreon posts that publish to their own RSS feed. So from here on out, I believe you'll get a link every single time. You'll at least get a notification every single time. But if you use that link to just straight up subscribe and whatever podcatcher you got going, then those will just keep feeding to you. So
should be good there. Yeah. But you'll always be able to catch them on the Patreon site. Along with that, we should have the first episode of Book Club for Movies After Dark come out this week.
Oh boy, yeah. Did you record that this week?
We sure did over the weekend. I've got our first guest, a friend of the show, Jake, is going to be joining me for some discussion around the Suicide Squad.
How did it go?
Very good. It was super fun.
Awesome.
It was great, especially because Jake was not expecting to enjoy that movie even a little bit. And so when we get to how that movie opens up, boy, oh boy, that was a moment where he went, okay, better movie than I expected already.
Can't wait to hear it. I might sign up for the Patreon.
Go to patreon.com/bookclubformovies if you want to do that, Ryan. You could do that.
Thanks.
I think that wraps up Patreon business. Yes?
Possibly, yeah, because I didn't do a written thing this week because I feel like the podcast kind of took that spot and it was a busy week anyway. So yeah, keep looking out. Our goal is to get to the point where also signing up presents kind of a content drop there or whatever. At some point we're going to have so many posts going that I hope that provides value in and of itself just to sign up. You unlock all those. So yeah.
And we've got podcast episodes. Oh, the other thing, Patreon, this one, depending, this one might actually, I might drop as a kind of a free one to entice people, but you and I will be going down a deep, dark rabbit hole, a companion show actually for the Suicide Squad. That'll come out sometime before the end of the year. We're going to go pretty deep on this. At least I am. We got a lot of comics to read for it.
Yeah, I saw your list.
So hopefully before the end of this year, and we'll try to tie a couple of other things up. So that'll be on the new podcast. It's going to be called Book Club for Movies Pull List. So that'll be all comic related stuff. I've got a bunch of things lined up for that. I'm going to be reaching out to some people for guest hosting and stuff. That, I think, wraps up all the Patreon stuff.
Okay. All right. And continued shout outs to Jonathan, Adam, Jonathan. Wait. Okay. Over 50% of our patrons might be John. Anyway, Beth, and of course, our anonymous benefactor. So thank you. Continued shout outs. And I hope you enjoy the show today, which is, in fact, on Dune, the 2021 version. Matt, do you have a synopsis for us today?
Today, would be the one day you would catch me without a synopsis if I were not prepared to do this. But that's not today. I'm always prepared. I always have a synopsis. Always. So you want one for this? Sure, I've got one. I'll give it to you.
Is it under 3 hours? Sorry. Okay. All right.
Dune coming at you 2 hours and 35 minutes, written by John Spates, Eric Roth. By the way, we're going to take a little detour here. Eric Roth, by the way, writer of Dune, also writer of Stars Born, Munich, The Insider, Forrest Gump. Real weird for me to see that name and go, huh? John Spates also has a couple of interesting credits, but not as interesting as Forrest Gump, who happened to be... Anyways, and Denis Villeneuve, directed by Denis Villeneuve, starring Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Stephen McKinley, David Dastmalchian, Sharon Duncan Brewster, Chang Chen, Dave Bautista, and Charlotte Rampling. Here's your book club for movie synopsis for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Charged by the Padishah Emperor of the Imperium to take stewardship of the galaxy's most important planet Arrakis, House Atreides, led by Duke Leto, begin to unravel a sinister plot against them that will decide the fate of their entire house and space travel itself.
Is that the most nerve-wracking synopsis you've done? Did you feel a lot of pressure to get that one right?
No, not even a little bit, because that one's it's like the easiest synopsis to do, especially for this part of the movie. If I had to do the whole thing, it would still be the same thing, but I would probably make some weird reference to Muad'Dib, which we'll talk about eventually.
So you were basically just going from memory. Like you didn't even need to look twice probably at that.
No, I didn't.
Did you need to see the film at all? Was that an issue?
I absolutely did not.
Okay.
No. I admittedly... I did talk about this in the newsletter. There's actually pretty good. I wrote a pretty big chunk about this, so I'm not gonna go.
Well, even last week on the show, you didn't mince any words about the film and about your history. Yeah, even though I do want to still start with the book a little bit. Obviously,
it meant a lot to me as a kid. It was the first. It was the first big sci-fi book, like for me. Like that was my introduction to. I had seen Star Wars and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed sci-fi movies, but like. I had not read anything at the point, when I was young. I was definitely young when I read Dune.
Well, yeah, I mean that book itself came out in the
60s,
60s,
yeah, something like that. So. Yeah, it's a create, and it started off not even as a book. It started off as a series in a magazine. It was
correct, which is how a lot of sci-fi starts actually.
It did. I mean, that's how tons of stuff go back. Lovecraft did a lot of that too.
65. Was when the novel came out.
But yeah, so I saw the movie finally at one point, and my dad gave me the book, and it was my first foray and first understanding of sci-fi as a greater thing. Like oh my gosh, the movie was really cool, and my dad was like, yeah, the movie's neat, but this is gonna blow your mind.
Oh, so you did see the movie before?
Definitely,
reading the novel.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was way too young, and my dad actually thought that I was going to be bored by the movie. And nope, I was in on that one, man. I loved it. So dad gave me the book. I fell in love with it. And, I mean, it is one of the few full like novels that I can honestly say I have reread multiple times. Like comic books, trade paperbacks. Yeah, dude, I reread those all the time. Novels are a lot harder for me to get into.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm definitely more of I definitely prefer short story stuff. But boy, oh boy, that's a novel that I read multiple times, read the series up to a point again. I read through all of Herbert's stuff, but when Brian took over, I didn't read any of his stuff up until the comic books. So
when was the last time you read the book, actually, you think?
Yeah, that would definitely be probably end of high school.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much when I fell off the novel train as well.
Yeah, I mean the last novel I think I read was either a book that was about the Replacements, or it was Ron Perlman's frigging memoir. So it's like
true. Yes, I have. If you count those as novels, I have also read like the Tim Burton biography and Duke Ellington,
which I don't read as novels, because to me those read more like a giant Wikipedia page.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the Tim Burton one is I feel like a compilation of interviews anyway. So yes, okay. I've never read the book. I am very close to now at this point, if that's any spoiler for my feelings on the film.
Nice.
But strangely enough, wanted to talk about what has happened since that book came out, because for a long time, even arguably after the David Lynch film, people believed Dune to be one of those unfilmable stories, right? I feel like that's a word you'll hear over and over when it comes to this.
Yep.
And the David Lynch film was not even the first shot at it. In fact, I guess there has been a documentary about the other shot at it. Have you seen that? Okay.
Jodorowsky's Dune. That would have been the most mind-blowing iteration of this book ever.
Okay, I had no idea, so you might already know all of this. Obviously, this is from 1971, where Arthur P. Jacobs had it, but sold it in 74 to Jodorowsky, and he assembled a cast list such as Salvador Dali as Shaddam. Is it?
The Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, yes.
Okay, yes. Orson Welles as the Baron. Gloria Swanson as Reverend Mother. David Carradine as Duke Leto. Charlie Chaplin's daughter as Jessica. Freaking Hervey. I'm not gonna
Hervé Villechaize?
Yes, thank you. As Gurney Halleck.
As Gurney, sure.
Did I pronounce that wrong too?
No. As just okay. Hervé Villechaize as Gurney is
tattoo for everybody.
Yeah, no. Again, it's you go back to this documentary that they made of this. You should watch the documentary. Jodorowsky. It's crazy.
I should. Yeah.
It's
Udo
lunacy.
Kier as DeVries and freaking Mick Jagger as Fade Rautha. So
yes.
Needless to say, it didn't get made. Apparently, it got as far as. In fact, it got $2 million into pre-production. With H.R. Geiger on the payroll doing some of the stuff for House Harkonnen. I keep saying Harkonnen. It's Harkonnen, right?
Honestly, it's a flavor thing.
Okay.
Because I have said Harkonnen my entire life. It's not until it was not until Vinod
I think
decided
in this
it's Harkonnen.
film, it's Harkonnen.
They go with Harkonnen. Harkonnen, I think both of them. Actually, you know what? I might be wrong. I don't remember how the sci-fi series.
Well, this is the first time I'm learning all of these names, so I'm going to get it doubly wrong, and that's going to be my excuse from here on out. But my favorite story from that Jodorowsky film is that apparently Dali wanted $1,000 an hour, straight up just went with the hourly rate on
Salvador Dali.
Set. So Jodorowsky said, okay, fine, we can do that, and scheduled all of his shoots for exactly 1 hour. And planned to use a mechanical mannequin for the rest of his stuff in the film.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But yeah, that didn't happen. They got way too far into the script. They started to deviate. Jodorowsky was distancing himself from the source material because the way he put it was he wanted to do not only his own thing, I'm sure, him being an artist, the artist that he was, even if you look up his stuff. He wasn't so much into producing somebody else's vision, let's say. Anyways.
Right.
In 76, Dino De Laurentiis stepped in, as he often did in 76, in the 70s. And Geiger was retained, actually. Smart move. I think he stayed all throughout the Lynch stuff, in fact.
Yeah, you can definitely see it with the Harkonnens. I'm going to say Harkonnen when we're talking Lynch,
well, now I
that's
messed
what
it
they
up for
call
the whole
them.
show.
Well, no, it's because that's what Lynch that's how they're called in the Lynch version. But you can see it for sure in their in their clothing, in the fashion that they chose.
Makes perfect sense.
Costuming
and
is the
also
word.
Makes sense that Ridley Scott would have been hired to also direct. Him and Geiger, obviously hot off of Alien in 79. But
Alien.
Ridley Scott's brother died. Lynch was offered the role in 81, and hot off Elephant Man, even just Eraserhead right before that. That's quite the 2 movies in a row for him, obviously.
Crazy.
He said he chose to do Dune over Return of the Jedi, I guess was also on his plate.
Smart.
Even though he hadn't read the book and wasn't all that interested in sci-fi. So
yeah, it's everything about. I think the easiest thing to say about Lynch's Dune is I like it as a movie. It does a fine job translating a couple of very specific scenes, but the overall it's lost. The story, so much of it is lost in that, because the reality for Dune as a story is, for while that book is not that long, it's like I don't know. I feel like it's only 300 pages, if that.
Oh, really?
It might be. Maybe it's longer, and I'm just imagining it. But I don't think it's not a chunky book. But the thing that Lynch tried to do that Vinod completely ignored, which is the right thing to do, is David Lynch tried to make a movie that was based on a book he didn't care for, and in doing so took all of the elements of the book. Like, part of the problem with that, why this book is unfilmable, quote unquote, it's similar to Watchmen in the sense that when it comes to Watchmen, I think people get hung up on the squid. That's what made it unfilmable, because I think overall the story is tellable. And I think it was. The problem with Dune has universally been, it's not that it's unfilmable, it's that the sci-fi series does it right, because they did a long series for it. And the book is so much in people's heads that it's similar to actually Blood Meridian. Why Blood Meridian has never been put on film. Part of the reason is there's no dialogue. It's all like in people's heads. And Dune is a lot of that. And a lot of this also, so you have a perspective thing. So the challenge for Dune is, how do you take the perspective, pull it outwards so we can get a more holistic view of the world that's going on while staying focused on where we need to. And I think that's more difficult than Lynch wanted to put in. And so he did. He took he took steps.
He went the narrator route, from what I understand, which is oftentimes the easy way out.
Well, it's not just that. It's every character is like, every moment of the movie you have close-ups on characters and you just hear voiceover of
interesting.
So a great comparison here is the moment where Liet Kynes and Paul and Gurney and Douglito are seeing the crawler for the first time. They're seeing how the spice is mined, and Leto says, "Land, we're picking all the people up. Damn the spice." In Vinod's film, we're given "damn the spice," and we get a quick shot of Liet going, "Interesting." Like, she has a moment. Like, there is definitely there. Whereas Lynch outright just pans a quick shot to Max von Sydow, who was Liet in that movie.
Oh, wow.
Where with his voiceover going, "Against my better judgment, I like this Duke." Like, okay, so Lynch,
you can say it. Yeah, no.
Literally took out any subtext from this movie and gave it a voiceover.
Yeah, and that's the criticism I saw most of all, which, even though that movie has reached cult status,
I love
kind
it.
of unsurprisingly.
I love it.
That is the criticism that came about from both critics straight up and audiences apparently at the time. Didn't do well, obviously. No. And the reason I bring all of those things up, as interesting as even that discussion is because now we exist in the time, because even when Lynch made his, like, you couldn't necessarily say, I mean, okay, in a very much a different way, you could say films can do anything. You know, that's kind of always been the promise of film and what us romanticists, love to talk about.
Sure,
but
film is limited by our imagination.
Sure, yes. But now it's with computers and all that, like, it's maybe more true than ever, but in a way that it's kind of like monkey paws, so I feel like that's the question I want to go into in speaking about the 2021 version. Now that we can do anything, now that it's really not unfilmable, where almost nothing is quote unquote unfilmable, at least visually speaking, how does this one do? And also because the story leading up to this one is a lot shorter, and it's basically Denis, which for all English purposes should be pronounced Denis, and after that, which I don't know. You've settled on something that I want to adopt just for the whole of the show. How did you go there? Denis?
His name is Denis Vinod.
Oh, Denis Vinod. I love it. Okay. So Denis Vinod.
I'm sure that if I was French, I would have a way better pronunciation. Villeneuve.
Yeah, sure.
Villeneuve. But it's Denis Vinod.
Had been outspoken about wanting to do an adaptation for a long, long time. And very obviously, I believe you mentioned this already, has reverence for the source material and had ideas, about what he wanted to do with it. So he convinced both Brian Herbert and Warner Brothers that was doable. And it appears to have been his thing from then on out. And you're right, you listed obviously a lot of other people that are involved, but in looking at it, especially, it does seem, and I haven't seen a lot of his movies. We talked most recently about, I think, Prisoners.
Prisoners, man. Yeah. So good.
But he's done, obviously Blade Runner 2049
Sicario.
and Sicario. Yeah. So in just seeing the ones I have seen, this does look unmistakably like one of his, and it looks like the perfect marriage of that.
Agreed.
Like it just seems tailor-made for him as well, in addition to being something that he truly cared about. So that's a lot up front, and I feel like I talked a lot during our Free Guy episode, and you certainly have more to say about this as a property than I do. So if that's any indication of our dynamic where I talk your ear off for a movie like Free Guy, and you can take over for a movie like Dune.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. We know which one of these episodes is definitely going to have more likes and love.
I don't know.
It'll be Free Guy. People are going to listen to this and go, oh, let's pick apart what idiot Maddie has to say here.
No. In fact, by all accounts, I think Dune is doing pretty good, isn't it? Like,
no, he got his second movie, so we'll get the completion of it, which is all that matters.
And that was part of his agreement too, is that he would not do this in just one movie. His pitch was 2 movies minimum, and the other one doesn't come out till 2023, which I feel like is nuts. Like, I want to do 2 movies. I don't want to film them at the same time. And this one, like, the marketing cycle is going to be so long between the 2 that you're just going to have to live it. Like,
I'm legitimately
almost
curious.
amazed he still got it. Yeah.
So my understanding was that he didn't get the budget to do both movies at the same time.
True.
We'll give you 2 movies, but you're only going to get the budget for one. And if we can get X amount out of it. Now, the thing is, everybody was saying this has to be like a massive hit for him to get the second movie. Well, I don't think that's true at all, because I don't know that any of his movies have been like I guess Sicario,
massive hits,
but
right,
none of them have been massive hits. However, this is a specific IP. It's going to have a ton of money into it. I don't know how that all worked out. But whatever, all I can say is that from the external perspective, without having any of the actual knowledge, my understanding was there was no guarantee until the movie came out. The movie came out, made enough money, or did whatever it needed to do, and now we're guaranteed the second movie. Awesome.
Yeah, you're right.
Great.
This was the Dune Part 2 Kickstarter movie. So
it was, yes.
That you're correct, but it appears like we did it.
I wonder if Denny got a hold of Zach Braff for that and to too deep of a cut.
No, I mean, Zach Braff did the Kickstarter movie thing. I guess that was the inflection point for that whole thing, right?
Man, people got mad at him for that. People got mad at him.
I'll allow it. Moving on.
Thank you.
So you have, like I said, already made your feelings known last week on the show, a little bit in the newsletter. You like this movie.
I did. I'm a big fan. I am definitely the one that, I'm not going to go into this and I'm not going to nitpick. And when I did nitpick, I also nitpicked to the point where I went, it's just a flavor thing for me and certain part. There's one part I will admit, I had a pretty, I don't want to say heated, but I had a very spirited opinion on in a discussion over the weekend with some friends while we were playing Battlefield 2042, which by the way is stupid fun. Play it. It's on Game Pass. It's gonna be good.
I've played it. It's all right.
It's you do not have the same experience I do with it, correct. In terms of the reason it's fun for me is because we played, like, my friend group, we played them all in LANs and stuff. And so this is like the extension of we get to play again and I get to yell stupid words. So there's one scene in particular that I did have a bit of a spirited thing. And I will flat out say, yes, I liked Lynch's version better. There are a couple of things that overall I think are, I want to say a couple things. There's one thing I think is an overall miss especially for the time. And I would have rather, you've already committed to 2 hours and 35 minutes. Is 2 hours 40, 250, is 3 hours really just add the stuff you need to add in, right? Like I'm sure that there were cuts for reasons. And Denis Villeneuve is one who's kind of gone along with the, I get Final Cut, so what you get in the
I was going to
theater.
say, I don't get the feeling there's any studio cuts in this thing.
No. I don't think there's studio cuts here. It's more of he felt whatever he felt. I'm not sure what else was cut out. I will be very interested to see what scenes did get on the cutting room floor, because assuming they'll do a, some kind of criterion or something for it. But yeah, the overall for the movie it's absolutely gorgeous. The film looks beautiful from top to bottom. Every place that we go, the movie is spent in a majority of its time on Arrakis. So it's a very drab color, and he still managed to make that interesting and visually striking in ways that I don't see typically when you have a movie that's made in the desert or made in a kind of a in a monochrome environment. It's also, like there aren't a ton of movies that I think do a great job with it, and this is one that does it.
I think that's why he's tailor-made for something like this, though.
Agreed.
I mean, he's done fabulous work with colors in the past and stuff like that, but where the movie might lack a palette somewhat in some instances, he does it all with textures and
I utterly hate saying this phrase because I think it sounds pretentious and douchey, but
I feel like I'm gonna love it.
But he does an amazing job being a visual painter. Like, he knows how to give you he knows how to take a blank canvas like a desert and make it textured and interesting and drawing your eyes to places that you would not necessarily think to look at because you're looking at a desert, and it's super fascinating, especially with not only the textures, but the shapes that they find in the sand that are naturally there, that are in the dunes, that are in the rock formations. Super beautiful.
And to say nothing of just the use of water. I mean, it's obviously there's even a thematic play going on there with,
absolutely,
with moisture and all that being a desert, but where he uses it and when he focuses on it and what it does and how it moves, like it's all like who cares about colors at this point,
No, it's all stuff that stands out. And the other thing that I again, there are filmmakers out there that I utterly adore. I love them, love them, but do not think they have the visual style or and this is so important, was the way Vinod worked with sound design here to create all of these landscapes and different types of people, different races, different everything, and they all have unique sounds that all feel like they come from the same universe, but also feel wholly unique. So Caladan, the sound of Caladan, the sound of the Atreides troops and the sound of their weaponry versus the Harkonnens and the sounds that they have for their troops versus the troops in Seleucus Secundus that are the Sardaukar, the mercenaries.
Right.
So all totally different. And then on top of all of that, what I frigging love that you have all of these big sounds and all of this great sound design, and then you have the heart portions of the movies with the Fremen, who have next to no sound. Their sound is the sound of water. It's the sound of just sand and softness, and it's perfect. It is an amazing way to differentiate everybody in a single universe, in single places on a single planet. Audibly, it's amazing to me.
You saw this in the theater, didn't you?
Sure did.
I am at least conscious enough to know halfway through a movie like this that, yeah, I was like, man, I probably should have seen this in the theater, which I don't say often. We all know this, but if I had a cool theater nearby, I'm sure I would. But yes, to watch a movie good enough that it's like, man, I should go to Regal is saying something. So
it's I cannot stress this enough. I love this movie. So we went out of our way. We specifically were like, you know what, we're gonna see it in the theater because it's a thing for me. I have no doubt that the movie represents well at home. But yeah, like
yeah, but no, I missed out. Like all of that sound stuff you talked about. Like I did get the differentiation so much, and sound is often something that can be additive, and I'm sure I received on a level at the very,
Sure.
but I didn't have the insight that you did, and probably for that reason I just didn't, and the movie even has like vibratory elements to it, right? Like with the worms and what they receive.
Definitely, yeah.
The way it's visually represented, I did, it did hit home, because I got that, where they're pounding on the sand, or even just when somebody's walking, or when he shoots somebody's feet, and it's always there, it's ever present.
Sure,
but I didn't receive it like you just mentioned, so I kind of missed out. But
I know I hope that when if it's still in the theater, I hope you can get a chance to go catch it.
It's true, it is. Yeah, I guess I can just.
It is. I think it's again. I think that's all beautiful. And it's great. We can go through and talk about so whatever you want to, however you want to go through it. The one thing, one person I do want to absolutely just straight up call out and say is Rebecca Ferguson, who I frankly, name wise, was like, I don't know her name, and I looked her up and I went, oh, okay,
whatever.
So I've seen
you love The Greatest Showman.
So I've seen her in a couple of things. Did not realize it was her. But whatever, all completely my mistake, because she Rebecca Ferguson plays Lady Jessica, Paul's mother. She owns this movie, man. Every minute she's on screen, she's just so good. So good. I like amazing. In
fact, I don't have I have, not only do I not have a problem with anybody else's performance, I love everybody else's performance. I thought real quick about the Baron, and Skarsgård, right?
Skarsgård, man.
Fantastic. Chalamet, even, like, I get that he's the it kid probably at this point, or has been for some time.
Yeah.
And there were some like Zendaya. I don't even know if I should say anything about Zendaya, because I feel like this isn't her movie. Her role has to be bigger in the second one.
It will be significantly bigger in
but
the
even
sequel,
what she gets in this movie, I don't think she does a great job with, so I guess we'll see. But the way Chalamet does Paul, I'm surprised, because I feel like obviously he's the son of a royal. He's either going to be the know-it-all brat or whatever, or maybe just for someone who hasn't seen Game of Thrones, maybe Joffrey is just, all encompassing at this point. But he plays it so, I want to say down the middle, but I feel like doesn't do it justice, because I was never annoyed by him. He just didn't have any of the tics that I feel like annoy me about these characters when they pop up in every, even for the quote unquote maybe Messiah or whatever, he never played that up. The one, he never played that part up. He never played at the very, very beginning, he seems a little disinterested when his mom's trying to teach him about the voice stuff, and he's kind of coming to terms with his birthrights and all that.
Sure.
He just played it perfectly for me and for my taste, it seemed, the entire time, that I was never annoyed with that character. I was always rooting for him. You are going insane. I think you have some words of either agreement or disagreement.
No, total agreement. No, total agreement. It's one of the better portrayals of Paul for my money. Paul, like, you're kind of hitting on what's interesting about Paul in general, and we can actually touch on this. I think gets touched on in the film too. The Atreides are, for all intents and purposes, the good guys of the Imperium. People like them. People enjoy working with them. Duke Leto is not a bad guy inherently. His people like him. The people of Caladan like the Atreides. Very different, very, very different than the Harkonnens, and very different than the Padishah Emperor and their family too, because some of the other houses they're greedy, they're self-centered, they own the universe. The Padishah Emperor is the emperor of the Imperium. He doesn't have as much money as the Harkonnens do, and they both don't like the Atreides because other people do. So it's interesting, especially when you start learning a little bit more about the history of the Atreides and all that. But for this film in particular,
yeah, because the Emperor's stuff doesn't even ever come in, and I've read somewhere that was a conscious decision by Denis,
which I think is actually a solid. He doesn't need to be as involved visually, because his part truly is the Sardaukar, and then working behind the scenes with the Harkonnens to destroy the Atreides.
Oh, so the Sardaukar come from the Emperor's house. Gotcha.
And that's how. So the Emperor is the Emperor. The Sardaukar are basically his shock troops. They're his mercenary.
I thought they were still related to Harkonnen.
No. So that's the part of the key is that with the money thing is that the Harkonnens have so much more money than the Padishah Emperor. He says, well, we don't want spice production to stop, because one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is the purpose of Arrakis Dune itself is the sandworms somehow have a connection to the planet, and the planet is filled with this stuff called spice. It's called melange in the book. And that is the thing that allows space travel. Without that, space travel can't happen. And it's the only planet in the Imperium that contains spice. So the Harkonnens have owned and controlled it and basically tried to, they've mined it forever. They hate the Fremen. The Fremen don't like them. The people of Arrakis that
Fremen are the indigenous people to
right. Who live in the desert, basically.
Underground. They live in the spice, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Emperor says, okay, you can I'll give you back Arrakis. You can take a bunch of my troops to make sure the Atreides are completely wiped out, but you owe me a ton of money for it. So he has to pay the Padishah Emperor for the battalions of Sardaukar that he gets, while the Emperor then gets to sit back, go, I don't know anything that's going on. The Harkonnens have taken over Arrakis again because they got into the Atreides got into a fight with the people of Arrakis. They were decimated. The Harkonnens never had that problem, so let's have them back. We know at the beginning of this that Oscar Isaac, that Duke Leto, knows this is all nonsense. He knows that getting the planet is not it's not
right.
There's nothing good about it, but he does realize the importance of it. He does realize that he has other houses that will back him. So his play is, all right, I know I'm going into a trap. Let's go ahead and see what I can do. He's knowingly going into it as a trap. He's hoping he's smarter than the Harkonnens. And at the end of the day, getting to the point with Paul. Sorry, I went down. I went downhill because I do need to get into a point. I do need to get into to something further that does get glossed over in this movie, and it's one of the big misses. But
let me tell you why I'm letting you go is because I am sold, man. Like, I didn't know nearly anything about Dune. I saw the Lynch one in film school. Obviously, that's where you would watch it.
That's where you watch it.
And don't remember a thing about it. So I'm kind of coming in at this new, and less than halfway into this movie, I'm like, I'm glad I came in with no baggage, but I am in. Like, obviously millions and millions of people have been in for Dune over the years,
yeah.
Just to let you know. So as much as, yes, we probably shouldn't go into the details of the plot, it's just endlessly interesting as a world, but also as it's portrayed here. Like, it's told perfectly, and I get the feeling, this is the weird thing, I get the feeling that a lot is left out.
Yes.
And it's still good. Like, that's the weird thing, right? So please.
to jump back just to 2 seconds about what you were saying about Paul, because all of this does feed into, especially with Leto, you have to think of Paul growing up. He does grow up down that middle of the road thing. Paul knows right from wrong. He has a pretty good, solid moral compass, and he gets it from all of the characters. We know how much he loves Duncan. Duncan is like his best friend.
Jason Momoa.
Yes, who wouldn't want Jason Momoa to be their best friend?
Yep.
But Gurney as well, and then Dr. Yue and Thufir. So all of these people come into contact with him and give him something unique that makes him kind of who he is. But they're all so centered and allow him to be centered. And then beyond all of that, he's also brought up with a Bene Gesserit mother who, in defiance of the Bene Gesserit, which could easily lead to her being killed, but her being confident enough that she was going to be the one to birth the Kwisatz Haderach.
Man.
So
glad you're telling this part.
He does get the the kind of centered and ability to be calm from that perspective, from that part of his life, his mother, and that whole bit at the beginning where he's like, I don't want to. It's a great example of he's still young, he's still a child, but he also very much recognizes where he is in terms of he's not a kid that just is part of he lives on Caladan. He's going to be the next Duke of Caladan. He's going to, and Chalamet throughout the movie does a great job riding the line of being young, still having some naivete, but clearly, like I felt that at no moment did he seem like he didn't fit that the character, that like Paul was all of those things. When we get to the climax of this film, Paul always was able to do that. Paul had the ability to win that fight, to do that fight earlier in the film if he had to. But that's that, like, I don't know. There's just something there about him. And I think you're dead on. Chalamet did a great job being down the middle without being going petulant or going vanilla or yeah.
I guess I was just surprised at how much I ended up liking him, because he is it's this ruling class, so he's way up on the ladder, right? So I feel like that's definitely not likable nowadays at the very least. And also the story itself even flirts with the whole white savior thing, like these outsiders coming in, are they going to be, Chalamet's character Paul is this religious figure, is he the Messiah for the indigenous peoples there? And I think they do some smart things to kind of skirt that. And again, I'm surprised how much I like the character, so maybe this has something to do with that as well. But the movie begins from the point of view in fact, I want to say Zendaya might be the one doing the narration at the beginning, where she basically tells the tale of Harkonnen's been there, exploiting their spice and oppressing them, and then they leave out of nowhere. So who will our next oppressors be? Cut to House Atreides. So it sets that up from that point of view. And then when you already mentioned this moment, so I want to go back to it too, because it fits in. But that moment where Duke Leto says, forget the spice, in favor of saving humans that are mining the spice, and the, I forget what she is, the ecologist who
Liet Kynes,
supposedly works for the Emperor.
The planetologist.
Like she gets a shot that's like, because obviously House Harkonnen would have said, who cares about the people, get me the spice, but yeah, that moment is great. You understand what they're going for immediately with how different Duke Leto is. But then also his whole thing is to bring in the Fremen and ally with them. They find out that there's not just 50,000 of them, there's like 50 million of them.
Yeah.
So it skirts it, and it'll, I'm sure, deal more directly with it. But all of those factors combined, I'm like, man, I felt like there would have been an easy version of Paul that I just did not like, or
Kyle MacLachlan's. Look, and I like it. And I don't have I like Lynch's version, but Kyle MacLachlan is exactly that. He is,
really?
He is the very much so the kind of white bread, very plain, very boring Paul Atreides. But that's also the movie that Lynch wrote. I don't know that MacLachlan could have done better. I just don't know that anybody could have.
He wasn't the Timothy Chalamet of his time. Is that what you're saying? Do I keep saying Chalamet? Chalamet.
I like
Chalamet? Chamberlain. Charlemagne.
Chamberlain.
So actually, I'm curious too, how much of that is written into the original book? Like
most of it.
But the whole white savior thing, is that something? Because I feel like this came about at a time where obviously that was not a trope, maybe that was even looked down upon all that much, since we were,
So the answer is yes. I'm sure. I don't know what Herbert's like. I know that Herbert had some interesting influence for the story itself. And it did come from some weird planetology stuff, like changes in the world. I don't remember what it is. I actually just reread about it recently too.
Yeah, no, he did a bunch of mushrooms and thought about spice, and then he looked at desert religion, and obviously, one in particular.
Probably not too far off from the truth, actually. But But I mean, he does have a ton of the story. You know, there's clearly Middle Eastern religion, a number of other religions that are influenced here just based on the names. So that's clear. But Paul was always coming from Caladan, always going to save Arrakis and try to save the universe. And again, this movie and the completion of this particular story is a frigging swerve if you decide to read the rest of the books.
Interesting.
It goes.
Well, I feel like I did. Spoiler maybe for anybody but you, but I think I might have got the feeling that he becomes something of a dictator, like he becomes a poor messiah or a bad messiah to some extent.
Yes, to a point. Essentially, yeah. He also eventually becomes a sandworm, and the sandworm basically has his face.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Again, the first book is absolute glory. It's amazing. The story that follows through.
Wait, was that a Brian Herbert swerve? Nope. That's
no.
Okay.
And when you so the thing is when you read the stories in context, it's still ridiculous.
I'm sure,
but
right?
It makes more sense. But yeah, I have to. I mean, to the way I've always read it. Yeah, I mean, Paul is definitely coming in to save the poor from the evil, and the wicked.
Okay. Well, yeah. That's probably not a question that's answerable all that quick anyway.
I mean, if you want a true answer, you probably got to find something Herbert actually defined and said, Yes.
I read up on a lot of what he said, and I never got the feeling that, like he wasn't, there's no like Lovecraft level stuff going on here.
No.
Herbert,
but I don't think Herbert was a racist by any means.
No. I was just curious if this was always a very tempered treatment of that unfortunate trope, or if that's something that's, because I know also Denis consciously improved the roles of women in the film. Apparently in the book, they're not as prominent or well treated or whatever it is. So I know he did some of that. I'm curious if that's
in the book. So in the book, again, the book is mostly written kind of for Paul and from Paul's perspective. So the characters that get the most attention are, those characters that are the male characters certainly get more attention. I think Chani, Lady Jessica are really the only two that get a ton extra in comparison. Like Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohayam is more of, again, she's kind of like in this movie, she's actually handled almost the same, where she's very ethereal. She is always there and she is horrible, but she doesn't have a lot to do. Again, Alia, you haven't met her yet. She'll have a small part probably in the next movie. But yeah, I mean, there aren't a ton of women in the book, period. It's Chani, Lady Jessica, Shadout Mapes, Gaius Helen Mohayam, Alia, and I think that's it. I think everybody else, like
getting into the weeds about all this anyways. But I mean, I think I'm pretty much, I did love the film. I think it's great. I really, really did enjoy it. I'm all in on Dune as a series now. I'm looking, I probably still won't read the novel is the sad thing, but I'm very interested in the universe and what's going on. I'm a Dune head now. Count me in. I don't know.
Hey, there is a current comic being written by Brian Herbert right now. It's called Dune House Atreides.
That's the prequel one you were talking about?
It is the prequel. It's about Leto as a kid, and he meets where Duncan, Idaho came from. We meet Raban.
Maybe the best name in the film, by the way. The moment that name came up, my wife said, "Did somebody just say Idaho?" And I'm like, "I think so."
Yeah, Duncan, Idaho.
Idaho radar going off. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say about it? This is your show. I don't want to. I feel like I sidetracked you enough.
No.
Happy as you might have been to have it.
I guess I can tell you the couple things that I think were lacking in this.
Oh yeah, yes, please.
So the first one being Chang Chen plays Dr. Yue. He got short shafted big time. That character is so important to this story. And one of the things that they didn't even mention in this, and it's very, it's so impactful to the story that it doesn't matter if you don't know it, you don't know it, but I do. And that is, so, the diamond on his head, he had the diamond, the Mr. Sinister thing.
Yes.
Because he's Mr. Sinister. By the way, that guy would be perfect. He'd be great as Mr. Sinister. Like, he had a great look. So the doctors go through this deep conditioning to become the doctors they are, because doctors are also supposed to be the most like trustworthy people. And they briefly, like, it is glossed over in a single line by maybe the Baron. He says something like, they'll never suspect the person they trust the most. And it's because at some point they were able to break his conditioning. And we find out that the purpose of his conditioning, we find out that part of the breaking of the conditioning came from them threatening his wife, taking her and holding her captive when they had already butchered her and she'd been killed much longer before.
See that stuff, I would not be surprised if it was filmed. That sounds like stuff that gets filmed and just gets cut.
And that's what I'm saying is we're almost at 3 hours. Just do it, because it's how important that knowledge is and how deeply entrusted they all are to him to find out he is the one that's been broken. It is an incredible moment. And it actually leads into the other biggest issue I have with the film. I hated, and I say it, I love this movie. I watched it, it's fine, but I hate it. Lynch did this better. I think The Tooth was done better by Lynch. And
the what?
The Tooth.
The Tooth.
Leto is paralyzed by the hunter killer that sticks in his back. Yue comes out and tells him, I'm sorry, Duke. I had to do this. They have my wife. But remember the tooth. When you bite down on it, your last breath will kill. If it's right, you'll kill the Baron. So I hated this because, number one, the biggest issue I had, and I had it the second it happened on screen, when the Baron turns on his shield. I understand. Okay, the shield, maybe it stops. He can't jam the knife into him.
That's got to be in the book. They use it so much in the film. It's not in the book at all.
Shields are in the book. The tooth is in the book, but it's not like this.
The shields, they make a big deal that it's the slow blade, something moving slowly that gets through the shield, but
right. Which, by the way,
actually in the film, that's not like, there's lots of quick hits that are going, especially when Jason Momoa is going off. I'm like,
well, and the whole thing is you're supposed to see him like hitting it, and it's the concept they're going for is when he hits, if he holds it there and he pushes, as opposed to,
which would have been
the idea is that it hits and it ricochets. He's holding it there and pushing, and so,
which I love, actually. Give me a super slow-mo close-up or whatever right at that moment to see that. They never gave me that. Also, it seems like a small thing, and I know it's because I'm overly sensitive to action at this point, going through all of the movies.
Dude, yeah, seriously.
The action in this film isn't great. It's mostly done by not martial artists, so it's one of those things that you get to accept or whatever. But also, yeah, I feel like decisions like that would have been made by a better action director, or I don't know, whatever.
I'll argue that I actually like the fighting here, because I like that it's a more brutal thing. It's more like bashing. It's more brutal than martial art. The martial arts are they have a flow to them. So I actually we only get one really good scene, but I did like that, the whole when Duncan dies. Like, I think that was a cool scene. I think it looked good. It was fun. But to your point, it's not martial arts. It's not mind-blowing. And
no, I'm not even saying that, because there are martial arts that do exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying the caliber of the action, even, again, this is because I'm hypersensitive to it now,
sure.
I'm just saying it's not up to like Hong Kong standards by, uber professionals or something like that. It's
right.
Actors doing their best, which is still pretty good, and directed by somebody that maybe hasn't done a ton of, I don't know. That's, again, conjecture. I didn't look it up. Just a quick aside.
No, that's fine. But the point here that I was getting to was,
yes, the tooth. The point of the thing that we don't like about the tooth.
So in the book, it's a very, like, and again, Lynch kind of does this too, and maybe maybe my memory is off. But in the book, it's more, the Baron is not the one that's even close to him. He thinks it's the Baron, bites the tooth, exhales, and in doing so kills Piter. And that's about it. And Piter dies, and that sends the Baron off into a freaking, like, he loses it. He goes nuts because his mentat is gone. And that's the other thing that the movie does not do, is does not give you enough of an explanation. We get the one moment of Thufir doing his mentat thing, which was really cool. His eyes go white. He does the computation, and then he's done. We don't get anything from Piter, and Piter actually does have a couple of great moments in the
Polka Dot Man?
Yes.
Yep.
I also, I'm going to talk, I want to finish this thought on the tooth, but I want to mention it really bugged the crap out of me. I have to reread the book specifically now because I don't remember Jessica reciting the Litany of Fear. I remember, and maybe this might be again the Lynch in my head. I remember Piter doing it. I don't remember Jessica reciting the litany. Anyways, what gets me about the tooth thing is not only are we not given an idea that Leto he knows it's the Baron. He knows. But we don't get him doing a big exhale. We don't get him, which bothers me among other things. Yeah, he goes...
You're talking about this one?
Yeah, he bites the tooth and he goes... He doesn't go... He doesn't give it...
Oh, come on.
Which is exactly, by the way, how it's done. Prochnow nails it in the Lynch version. He goes... He takes a big breath, bites the tooth, then exhales. But I
will look it up because at this moment...
But here's the other thing that bothers me.
I'm not trying to
here's the other thing.
But okay.
No, whatever. Here's the other thing that's stupid. Number one, it's gas. The shield would not stop it. Why would the shield stop it?
It's true.
So the Baron
flip on his shield.
Baron shoots up into he shoots up into the ceiling and is sitting there crying and choking or whatever. But within a second, not even a second, everybody in that room across the table in a giant room are all dead from that. No, I'm sorry. There is nothing in the world that makes that scene work for me. And I hated it because the purpose of the gas was you blow it into the person's face. That's who it's going to get. It's not going to go and suddenly disperse to everything. So I'm supposed to maybe believe that because he blew it at the shield, which does flicker, that maybe the shield dispersed it. No, not at all. I could not, that scene does not jive with me logically. It doesn't jive with me in terms of the story that was being told, and it doesn't
because the shield doesn't keep oxygen from going through,
exactly.
Right? Otherwise,
there is no reason a heavy breath of any type should have, if everybody else there is dying like that, Baron's dead right there. And it doesn't work for me. It does not work for me at all.
And if you put him across the room, I don't know that you're necessarily losing anything. Yeah, I feel like the trade-off was they wanted a face-to-face with the Baron, and the Baron, his survival of something more. But I feel like that trade-off isn't worth, just doing it like you said. That makes more sense where he might be, if he's in the same room and other people in the same room died, he still has a getaway, like I feel like there's still some tension there.
And here's the other thing. So this is something that did you pick up on the importance of the ring at all outside of, well, it was my dad's?
Just in the way that those signets are normally important.
Right. So there's nothing given to that from the Harkonnen side, except in the story, the Baron desperately wants the ring because that to him is like, well, if he can get the Duke's ducal signet ring, he has like his trophy. For him, that means the Atreides are gone. They can never sign anything again because they have no more ducal signet ring. They have nothing. It's never brought up here in terms of the Harkonnens wanting it. It's never brought up. And it is in that scene. So Piter is killed. The Baron loses his mind because his mentat is gone. Then he doubly loses his mind because the ring isn't there. And that was part of the purpose of bringing the Duke, was getting the ring. And he loses his mind when the ring's not on him. Who has the ring? Where is the ring? And it becomes a big thing for the Baron. And it's one of those, like, it's the tiniest thing that sets him off. And it does cause a little bit of a break for him. So that's a big loss. And again, it's the one moment of the movie that, in terms of if I have to like nitpick, That bothers me. It really bothers me. Doesn't affect my love of the movie overall because whatever, everything else kind of worked out fine. Did not like that.
Well, not having read the books, just knowing what you just now explained to me, I didn't mind it. Like, I think what they traded for that was his obsession with the planet and the spice. In fact, he has some line in there with my planet, my spice, or something like that. Not that you can have both, but I could see. Yeah, no, I'm fine with that decision. Really,
it reduces the Harkonnens to like there's a personal vendetta here, and I think that gets lost overall.
True. Okay.
And so it just makes the Baron a land baron, which fine, okay, great. So kill everybody. Okay, there will be blood. Whatever. I agree with you on Zendaya. She's not given much to do here, and I will say that the stuff she is given, like I would never let you hurt my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
She was everything about MJ works. I don't know what's going on. But that's
here. I think it's one of those instances where she's doing a character that's closer to, it's more in her comfort zone with MJ. Because when she says her lines in Dune, I'm like, oh, she said those like MJ.
Right.
So
I didn't love that. I will say Javier Bardem's going to get a bunch more work to do in the next movie. Loved him.
He was fantastic. Yeah. Okay.
Loved him.
Sure.
He's going to get a bunch in the next movie. Chani will play a big role in the next film.
That's the ecologist, right?
No, that's Zendaya.
Oh, wait, she's dead.
The ecologist she was definitely eaten.
Sorry.
I want to finish on a positive note though.
Sure.
So for all of the wonderful things that were done here, the thing that I took away just being tickled by was how many times we were given shots of the kangaroo mouse.
Right. Shows up in a hologram, shows up on the desert.
Shows up
maybe one other time.
Yeah, and shows up towards the very end when they're just before they find the Fremen. So the kangaroo mouse, and there's a moment with the mouse, and then there's a moment where earlier on we see the suns and the moons of Arrakis that's got multiple. So those are going to become a plot point. The little mouse has a plot associated to it.
Oh, cool.
And it has a little payoff. It's not the mouse itself is not the payoff, but there is a payoff with the mouse, and it's a huge part of the story. And I really just loved that the mouse is a part of the story in a silly way. It should seem like a non-entity, but I loved that Denis Villeneuve chose to not only let the mouse have a couple of moments of screen time to tease it, but when it does pay off, when you think back to those moments, I think it's going to be really interesting, not only when he sees the mouse, but kind of the events that are going around at the time too. So it's a lovely little thing. And when it gets there, you will know because a major part of the story.
Hey, I get the feeling that we're going to both rewatch this film at the very least before the next one comes out. So if we're still alive and at this in 2023, look to Patreon for our special Dune retrospective podcast we will surely post there. I would give this film 300 stars flat, even. It's great.
Yeah, out of 298.
Very good.
It's very good.
If you agree, you can find us at podcast@bookclubformovies.com or Facebook and Twitter or Patreon. Again, you can contact us directly there, even if you're not a patron, I want to say. But if you are, it's all the more easier on Discord or whatever it might be. So, Matt, what are we doing next week?
Excellent question.
I got you this time. It's all about who asks the other person first.
It is. So, wait, do I have to answer or wait, do you
I don't know. I don't think we've talked about anything. Might be the issue here.
I chose Dune and told you Dune, and you said, I'm doing that already.
Okay, so come back next week for what might be the most blind that we've gone into any of our shows here on Book Club for Movies. I feel like I did the website and Patreon recently, so I'll skip those and just say goodbye.
Okay. Goodbye.